All right, so I'd like you to take a look at this slide for a minute and kind of register it in your brain. While I thank everyone here, it is such an honor and such a privilege to be among such brilliant people who are moving in the right direction for the planet. I am deeply honored. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, as the Buddhists and quantum physics tell us, nothing is as it appears. And yet, here we are. We're right here. And it's magic. And I want to tell you a little story, since we're talking about waking up, growing up, showing up. When I was 7 years old, my family went to the Methodist church every Sunday, and I was put in Sunday school like most kids. And one day we were in Sunday school, and they were reading the story. We had these little Bible books, and they were reading the story of Samson and Delilah. And I was sitting there, and I thought, this doesn't sound right. So I took my little Bible book in my arms, and I walked up to the teacher, and I said, "You're not telling the truth. And I'm not going to be, I don't want to be here anymore, and I'm never coming back." And my little patent leather shoes, boy, I was out of there. And of course, they got my mother out of the congregation. Our house was only a block away. I was trucking to get home, and I was pretty scared, you know. My mother caught up with me, and she put her hands on my shoulder and gently turned me around, and she stooped down so that her eyes were level with mine. And she looked at me, and she said, "I hear you told your Sunday school teacher that he lies. And you walked out of class and you said you never wanted to go back. Is that true?" And I said, "Yes." "That's true, you know." And she said, "Well, if you don't want to be in Sunday school, where would you rather be?" And out of the mouths of babes, I said, "With God." And she said, "Where would that be?" And I said, "Over there." And over there was a field with the most magnificent trees where I could lie down and look through the canopy and see the sunlight. And there were all kinds of creatures there was a little creek that tangled through this field in the tall grasses. And I'd watch the worms make designs in the mud. And there were birds, fabulous birds, and insects. And I loved the insects because I started to notice patterns in nature. And the greatest gift my mother ever gave me was not making me go back to church. And so I spent a lot of my life in the Creator's cathedral. And I developed an intimate relationship with the creation. And I saw her resilience, and I lived in her resilience. And the divine patternings and design. And that everything in nature has a purpose. Every single thing, from the invertebrates in the soil to the polar bears in the Arctic. And evolution is a tricky business, just like it is for us. There's precision in function, there's fragility, and there's the deceptively strong. And so as I traveled around from north to south, from sea to shining sea, the biodiversity on this planet is absolutely awesome, inspiring, stunning, staggering. And I was particularly drawn to trees. And I had one tree that I really loved, and I would lie on the roots and I'd try to hear it grow. And of course, that didn't work. So one day I had the idea of putting my back against, sort of in a meditative pose. And my eyes were closed, and I felt something shift. And I opened my eyes, and everything was changed. There was no distinction between me and the tree. It was like a Monet painting. Everything was energy. There was no boundary between my spine and the tree. There was no boundary between my feet and the roots. And that's when I knew that the ultimate impulse of creation of the universe is cooperation. And that I am the creation. I am the trees. I am the universe. So, you get to an age where you have to make decision. And you have many paths, and you have many faces, and you have many influences. And of course, when it's time to go to college, it's about, what are you going to do? How are you going to make money? And that's how success was defined then. And all the goodies that go with it. You know, what's it all about? Now, the classic car, I have to admit, I'm attracted to that. Shop until you drop. Can you believe it? Shop until you drop. And I thought, is this it? Is this what it's about? So I had a scholarship to Stanford, but I didn't go like Lynn. I decided that it was too far away from the wild nature that nurtured me. So at the age of 18, when I was the smartest I've ever been in my life, I married a rancher in the middle of the Colorado Rockies, and I learned how to shoot, how to ride, how to fix fence, how to get out at 2 o'clock in the morning at 20 degrees below zero and check during calving season to see if anybody was having a problem. And of course, my son was a product of that union. It was the best decision I ever made, and I went to a small liberal arts college. But then I had another awakening during this time, a rude awakening, in that not all is as it seems, as it appears. And a clear cut was proposed for our watershed. I was reading the legal notices in the paper one day. Who reads legal notices? I don't know why I was doing it, and there it was. And I challenged the Forest Service, and long story short, I ended up trading my cowboy boots in my beloved high country for high heels and lobbying the halls of Congress. We stopped that sale, that timber sale, but what I learned, and it's never been cut to this day, but what I learned is that it was only the tip of the iceberg. That so much was happening around the world, and most of the costs were hidden from the public. And I saw what it was doing to our brothers and sisters in the global south. I saw what kind of garbage, what kind of waste, and it was all for consumption. Excessive consumption of stuff and of energy. So I had to come to grips with my values and what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Because I had a very deep, profound, special relationship with the creation, and consequently, I felt the creator. So the second awakening came through what most of us have done in this room, and that is the inquiry within. And I started a deep meditative practice, which I still do today. And during that process, you look at the shadows, somebody mentioned that the other day, and you see many dimensions of yourself. And you have passages as you peel off the layers of the onion. And so I decided, because I had been in Washington, and it was a time of civil debate, it was a time of compromise, and the democracy, the republic we had, actually worked. So I decided I had to speak up. And I went to Congress, and I worked actually all around the world, but I worked in America for wild areas, which Carrie mentioned, so I won't go deeply into that. But I was in the wilderness a lot. In my past life, I owned a rafting company, I kayaked, I was a technical climber, I did all kinds of stuff. Anything I could do in the outdoors. And what I found was a living conversation with biodiversity. And that is that we've been operating under a very false assumption, an illusion, that we have dominion over nature. It's flipped. Nature has dominion over us. And it always will. And we're part of that. But we bought into the illusion. And so one of the things that I decided to do is to go into the corporate world and figure out, how do you move that around? How do you change that? And I was on the board of the Natural Step for a long time, and I don't know how many of you know that, but anyway, there's a pedagogy about what are the systems conditions required for life on this planet. And some of them they're very simple. It took an oncologist from Sweden who was looking at cancers in children to come up with this. It took him 10 years to distill all the scientific information. And I'll just give you two, which are common sense, really, common sense. One is you cannot mine a resource beyond its capability to reproduce itself. Number two is one species' waste is another species' food. The third one, which is really interesting, is you cannot have more subsurface material on top of the earth that cannot be reabsorbed into the earth. So cadmium batteries don't fall into sustainability. So if you're really looking at developing a sustainable company, go deeper. Really go into systems conditions. So then climate change kind of took over. It wasn't about just preserving an area here and an area there. Climate change, all human systems, all natural systems will become subservient to climate change if we don't speak up. So how many of you were in the climate march in New York? Okay, great. Okay. Almost 400,000 people in New York in September. And I was there, and I was speaking up. And because of climate change, one of the things I've learned is you have to be a global citizen. So I have started to penetrate the halls of power and the halls of faith. Because we really have to go there. We have to work at the grassroots, and we have to work at the levels of the highest influence. And that's what I call the sandwich effect of social change. And then aligning ourselves with solutions. So she mentioned the American Renewable Energy Institute. And that doesn't just look at renewable energy, it's multi-sector. It looks at a lot of different solutions to climate change. But what was happening during this time is women were coming forward all around the world. It was amazing. So I helped co-found this Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, which is now in 36 countries. And the woman in white with the long dark hair is the co-founder with me. And what started to happen, what I started to see, women have been in subjugation for mostly from religious doctrine and dogma for centuries. And now there is a little window that's opening up that's dissolving resistance to that subjugation. And the divine feminine is rising. And I submit to you that this is probably the most important, critical intercession of consciousness on this planet in our lifetimes. And why are they arising? Because we're devouring the planet. And women are the life givers, the caretakers. And they feel this, it's in our DNA. And it's awakening, and women are showing up. Now, one of the places where consciousness needs to really be brought into the arena is in our financial institutions. So I'm on the founding board of a new bank that's about ready to be established that is going to be operating under the principles of conscious capitalism and will be sustainable from A to Z. Whole series of criteria that has to be met internally and externally. And so women in their standing up are starting to penetrate into these different sectors. And as this divine feminine arises, more and more men are coming forward and finding their divine feminine and getting in balance. We have to get back in balance. If you're not in balance, if nature is not in balance, guess what? Cause and effect, cause and effect. It happens. It is the way it is. So, success. How do you define it? Live in no harm, absolutely as much as possible. Enjoy the creation. Other beings, including trees and oceans and fish and whales, they have rights. It's not just about us humans. They have rights. Nature has rights. Never turn our back on our true nature. Trust. Get into the trust frequency. The rules are different there. Trust the process of life, no matter what it brings you. Be willing to share what you know, your unique self, gently, kindly, with respect. Be in communion with other beings. It will change your life. It will change your perspective. It will open your heart in ways you can't even imagine. Do not be afraid of your own strength. Be willing to look beyond your feet to the horizon and be willing to jump there. And always operate out of love, not anger, not angst, not grasping. Operate out of love. And so if we're in harmony with nature and we're together, we're indivisible. We can do what we're talking about here. We can do it. And in that, we care for all generations of all beings. Because that comes out of it naturally. It's not something you have to do. It comes naturally. You want to do it. There's no other way. And so, is this enlightenment? Will this elevate humanity? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I ask you with all my heart, please, please, whatever you do, whatever business, whatever you buy, whatever you eat, do it for all beings. Thank you.